Hey everybody, welcome back. And today I want to take the car for a drive, but it's Minnesota and it's October, late October, and it gets cold, and it might be end of the season for me. So instead of that, let's just do a top five list because everybody loves lists. Am I right? So let's dive in. Top five things you should never do to your car. Let's start with number five. Number five is do not overfill the gas tank. Okay? So what can happen is if you overfill the gas tank to the very tip top where that neck comes up and you've got gas all the way to the tip top, is you can damage the evap canister that's inside, kind of near the gas tank itself. So that is a recirculating gas fume that kind of recirculates that back. There's a charcoal canister there, and there's a little flap that's inside there. And if you fill that with gasoline, what you can do is you can damage the flap. And what happens is you will then, if you damage that flap, you won't allow gas to get into the gas tank very easily. So you'll be filling up your gas tank at like half pump for the rest of the life of the car. So try not to overfill the gas tank and get gas into that evap canister. You can damage it. And they're kind of expensive to get, number one, to get at and to replace. So don't overfill your gas tank. Number four, do not put your car in cruise control while you have bad weather. So if it's raining, there's ice, there's snow, whatever, right? You might have that situation happen. So story time. I was working at a shop at the time, and a guy came in, and he had just bought a brand new truck, but except he had two black eyes, half his face was bruised, he had a broken arm, and he was walking with a limp, and he said his back hurt, and I said, you are banged up, what the heck just happened? He said, well, I was driving my truck, and I hit a piece of gravel, and I had the cruise control on. I said, okay, what's the big deal? He says, well, what happens is the truck wanted to then compensate because I wanted it to do 65 miles an hour. I hit a patch of gravel, ice, or whatever, and now the car is not doing 65 miles an hour anymore, but the car wants to get back up to 65 miles an hour. So what had happened was it had spun the tires trying to get back up to speed. He lost control, ended up spinning and then flipping his truck down the highway, and he was pretty banged up. But he had his truck replaced. But at the end, point is, do not put it in cruise control when you might think there might be bad weather, the roads are in bad condition, or you're on gravel, or that sort of thing. Do not put it in cruise control. Number three. Number three is for us proper manual gearbox guys. Okay, you guys rocking the shifter paddles, which is fun and cool and has its place, but nothing will replace the feeling of being able to take it from first to second, and grabbing that gear and then just feeling the tires go. What I'm suggesting is do not rest your hand on the shifter because there's a whole bunch of stuff and yakety schmackety and all the stuff going on in there. So you've got the transmission spinning at a million miles an hour. You got that shaft. You got the planetary gears. You've got a lot of gears moving all at once. And if you put your hand on the shifter, what you're doing is putting premature wear on all the gears in the planetaries because you're slightly, just ever so slightly, pulling it out of its natural state. And what you're doing is you're slightly just kind of nicking all the little gears for the future. So you're prematurely putting wear on your transmission if you rest your hand on the shifter. Do not do that. And I know that's hard to do, especially if you have a lot of hills or you're doing rock climbing stuff with your truck or whatever it is you're doing. If you rest your hand on it, you will prematurely wear out the transmission and you'll have to replace it. And of course, those are expensive. Number two. Number two is putting off maintenance. I understand owning a car is expensive, but think about it. Next to your house or wherever you live, it is the most expensive thing you are probably going to own. And if you don't, give it some sort of maintenance, you will shorten the life of that vehicle significantly. So I'm talking regular oil changes, whatever interval they suggest, for synthetics or regular. I run synthetic in most of my cars now. Um, air filters, cabin filters. Okay, we can have a debate about that one. Tire pressure, knowing what your tire pressure is, coolant, transmission fluid, those regular flushes, that sort of thing. It is way cheaper to maintain a vehicle than to fix it when it breaks. Okay, so coolant is cheap, brake fluid is cheap, and that stuff, it's hydroscopic. So what it does is it takes moisture out of the air and it turns that brown color. And once it's that brown color, it needs to be replaced. So these are kind of basic things that are important to the life of your car. And if you are neglecting them, you are going to cost yourself more money in the long run than if you just did them now. So just do it now. And finally, the number one thing is kind of an opposite of never do this with your car. It is an always do this. This is the exact opposite. Always know about your car. Okay? If you don't know things about your car, learn. Find somebody, go on the internet, go on YouTube, go read a book, go do whatever it takes to learn about how a car works. Okay? Why? Lots of reasons. Again, this is the second most expensive thing you're ever going to spend money on, so you should at least know the basics of how it works. Okay, so from when you open the door and put the key in and turn it, what happens? Okay, electricity goes to the battery, which then turns the starter, which turns the crank, which then starts all the electrical stuff. Your fuel pump, your injectors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so there's a lot of things that happen. There's lots of reasons why you need to know this. Number one, if something goes wrong, if it's going to be, if it's good or bad, and whether you can make it far enough to, wherever it is you need to go, or do you need to shut down right now? Okay, there are some scenarios where you can just keep driving and it's okay. There are some other scenarios you need to stop driving immediately and call a tow truck. It's just the way it goes. Okay. The other thing is you aren't going to be taken for a ride at any of these repair shops. Okay. So if you have some knowledge about how something works, you're less likely to be taken advantage of. Now, when I worked at a shop, it was really important to me that I was honest with people. However, I know there are dishonest people out there. So if you have some knowledge, you can at least understand you're being taken for a ride. And if you think you're being taken for a ride, stop, call a timeout, don't sign anything, and ask for a second opinion from someone else. Completely reasonable. And if that mechanic doesn't allow you or doesn't show you on your car what's wrong with it or explain it to you in a way that you understand and doesn't allow a second opinion, get out of there. That's not a person you want to be dealing with, okay? So know stuff about your car. There's a place near me about once or twice a year. They go to the library, they go out to the parking lot, and they have a basic course on how to change tires, change oil, how to check your oil, how to check coolant, where things go in the engine bay. If you're by yourself and somebody says, "Oh, I'll just add coolant," and you don't know where that is, that's kind of a big deal. You kind of want to know which hole to stick it in, because if you don't stick it in the right hole, you can do some serious damage. So what I'm saying is always the opposite, right? Not negative, not, never. Always try to learn a little bit about your car so that at least you understand how it works. You will have kind of this greater understanding and pride of understanding what's going on. And then kind of the other part is you're not going to get taken for a ride. And you might go down that path of being able to do things yourself, which in the long run will save you money. That's how I learned. I learned by trial and error, asking questions, reading things, doing all sorts of stuff. And now I can do a fair amount of stuff. So in the long run, knowledge will always be your friend.